Hello there, very good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime News here on News First, where the people come first. You're joining me, Naveksha Gunasekara, and we start off by taking a look at your headlines. IMF Sri Lanka reached staff-level agreement for $2.9 billion. Former SP indicted for Jairaj Fernando Pule assassination, acquitted for 13 years. Opposition leader calls for an end to media suppression. Sri Lanka trying to recover losses from controversial fertilizer deal.
පුළුවන් නම් අපිට මුදල නැවත ලබා ගන්න කියන එක මිලියන් 6.9ක වගේ මුදලක් තියෙනවා. බැරි වුණොත් අපි උත්සාහ දරුවා ඒ වෙනුවට රසායනික පොහොර ගන්න කියන උත්සාහය දරුවා.
In your top story, IMF staff and the Sri Lankan authorities have reached a staff-level agreement to support Sri Lanka's economic policies with a 48-month arrangement under the extended fund facility of about $2.9 billion. The objectives of Sri Lanka's new fund-supported program are to restore macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability while safeguarding financial stability, protecting the vulnerable and stepping up structural reforms to address corruption vulnerabilities and unlock Sri Lanka's growth potential. Debt relief from Sri Lanka's creditors and additional financing from multilateral partners will be required to help ensure debt sustainability and close financing gaps. Financing assurances to restore debt sustainability from Sri Lanka's official creditors and making a good faith effort to reach a collaborative agreement with private creditors are crucial before the IMF can provide financial support to Sri Lanka. Moving on, the International Monetary Fund mission led by Peter Brewer and Masahiro Nozaki convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
Because Sri Lanka's debt is unsustainable, for the IMF to be able to go ahead with committing resources and lending, it needs to assure itself that debt sustainability is being restored. This process will now need to get underway so that these financing assurances can be secured and that in fact move to a disbursing arrangement, to an arrangement that can be considered by the executive board and then ultimately disperse. If creditors are not willing to provide these assurances, that would indeed deepen the crisis here in Sri Lanka and would undermine its repayment capacity. So a deepening crisis means that essentially the resources available to service the debt would become less. So it is actually in the interest of all creditors to collaborate together and with Sri Lanka so that Sri Lanka can emerge from this crisis as quickly as possible and regain its repayment capacity and service this new debt that will come out of these debt negotiations. So it really is in the interest of all creditors to work with Sri Lanka on this front.
The so-called extended fund between us and the authorities extend for 4 years. And each disbursement, and then the total amount is distributed across over these 4 years. And the first disbursement will come at the time of IMF board approval, which is subject to actions, as Peter mentioned. And then it's going to be distributed across program period, and each disbursement is tied to the successful review by the executive board. So this is going to be distributed across program period.
Some of Sri Lanka's creditors are not in the Paris Club, and the IMF said that solutions need to be found expeditiously on this front as well.
In the case of Sri Lanka, there's a lot of debt that is owed to creditors that are not in the Paris Club, And as a result, one needs to think about how to deal with that, solutions that are appropriate to this case. It's important to move expeditiously. That really is the key here, because we want to avoid the crisis becoming worse. So having some kind of forum where creditor and debtor can discuss, can explain how they got to this situation and what they're doing to get out of it, and where creditors can listen and where creditors can see how all the other creditors are being treated. That really is an important step in moving forward in whatever context is found to do so. But we would encourage that process to move forward expeditiously.
The IMF delegation also said it will not be a part of negotiations between the debtor and the creditor.
The IMF is neutral, and so it can help and sort of inform the process. For example, this is routine with Paris Club restructurings. We can be here and answer questions with respect to the policy intentions and the economic reforms the authorities intend to undertake, but we cannot be part of the negotiation. Now, the authorities have hired financial and legal advisors who assist the authorities in this process, who have experience in doing so, and so we would expect this process to, in fact, it is already underway, but to really now expedite it in light of this staff level agreement that has been reached, that should give assurance to creditors that Sri Lanka will be engaging in a comprehensive set of economic reforms.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa has called for an immediate end to media suppression. Speaking in Parliament on Thursday, that is today, Sajith Premadasa said the government must immediately stop the suppression. He said, and I quote, "When Keheliya Rambukwala was the media minister, I warned them not to suppress the Sirasa media as they were drafting plans to do so. The plan was suspended," end quote. He said even today there are attempts being made to suppress the Sirasa media network, which was instrumental in introducing programs such as Gammadda, strengthening the poor people of the country. He reminded the president that when he was the former then Prime Minister in 2002, he removed the criminal defamation law. The opposition leader requested the president to end the suppression of Sirasa media and stop preparing plans to terminate the license of Sirasa media. Recalling the incident where several Sirasa Newsfirst journalists were brutally assaulted, the opposition leader questioned the delay in probing the attack. He reminded the president that it was the Sirasa media network that at one time supported him to move forward in his political career. The suppression of the Sirasa media, social media journalists must end and pave the way for media freedom, stressed the opposition leader.
මම එතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලීමක් කරනවා කරුණා කරලා මේ සිරස මර්ධනය නතර කරන්න. මේ සිරස ලයිසන් එක කැන්සල් කරන්නට අවශ්‍ය ඒ පිමුරුපත් සකස් කිරීම වහා නතර කරන්න. මොකද මේ වගේ ක්‍රියාදාමයන් තුලින් නරක පණිවිඩයක් වැරදි පණිවිඩයක් ජිනීවා වලට සැප්තැම්බර් මාසයේ ලබා දෙන්නේ.
Former SP for Gampaha A. Lakshman Kure and ex-LTTE cadres Selvaraja Piri Bhakaran, also known as Maurice, were acquitted and released from the Jairaj Fernando Pulle assassination. The two men were charged and indicted for the murder of former minister, the late Jairaj Fernando Pulle, and 15 others in 2008. The verdict was delivered by Gampaha No. 1 High Court Judge Sahan Mapa Bandara on Thursday, that is today. Jairaj Fernando Pulle was killed in a suicide bomb attack carried out by an LTTE terrorist on the 6th of April 2008 when he was participating in a New Year festival in Valley area. On the 12th of August 2009, the then SP for Gampaha, Lakshman Kure, was arrested citing direct links to the suicide bomb attack that claimed the life of Jairaj Fernando Pulle and the others. The World Food Programme warned the ongoing economic crisis and political turmoil have pushed food price inflation to above 90%, with a shortage of fuel disrupting access, livelihoods and food safety programs, leaving millions vulnerable to food insecurity.
The World Food Programme says that 3 in 10 Sri Lankans are food insecure amid the country's worst economic crisis since independence in 1948. Pregnant and breastfeeding women, children under 5 and people with disabilities are among the worst affected. It added that the flagship Triportia Nutritional Support Programme for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers and young children is stalled. Coupled with income losses and inflation, this could lead to higher rates of malnutrition for women and their children. Even before the ongoing crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, Sri Lankan women and children suffered from far higher rates of malnutrition than most other middle-income countries. 17% of children under 5 were too short for their age and 15% were too thin for their height, a figure which is considered very high in WHO classification. Indu Aberatna, activity manager with WFP Sri Lanka, who is closely engaged with the rollout of the emergency response, says, and I quote, "Focusing on vulnerable populations and communities is a priority to avert a humanitarian crisis." End quote. WFP will be reaching out to almost 1.5 million people in need of emergency food assistance through food, cash or vouchers. Nearly 6.3 million people are food insecure and in need of assistance. WFP's recent surveys indicate that 61% of families are resorting to at least one coping mechanism, including eating less nutritious food, and even skipping meals altogether.
Minister of Agriculture Mahinda Amaraveera told Parliament today that a committee has been appointed to access a way forward regarding the Chinese organic fertilizer ship. Sri Lanka's Ministry of Agriculture Mahinda Amaraveera said the country's Attorney General has advised on recovering the losses from the organic fertilizer procurement. In November 2021, the Sri Lankan government rejected a consignment of organic fertilizer from China's Tsingtao Ziwin Biotech Group Co. Limited, citing quality issues, a claim the firm disputed and demanded third-party tests. Thereafter, the government paid $6.9 million to the Chinese fertilizer company. The minister said that a committee led by the Agriculture Secretary was appointed to explore the possibility in recovering the losses incurred from the controversial fertilizer transaction. Moving on to more local news, the hike in water bill tariffs by 70% comes into effect from today. As per the revised water and sewage tariffs, the monthly water bill tariff per unit as well as the fixed rate will be increased. According to the previous rates, the water bill of a normal household that uses about 15 units was around 310 rupees. As per the new revision, for 15 units of domestic consumption, the water bill could be around 705 rupees. Up next is Crime Watch.
Crime Watch.
A woman died of gunshot wounds at the building of Kegol Samaki Janabalavega organizer Lakshman Disanayaka. The deceased is a 36-year-old Sakuntala Veerasinghe, a resident of Kegol.
Crime Watch.
A 28-year-old man was gunned down by unknown gunmen opposite the Balapiti hospital in Ambalangoda on Wednesday evening. Sri Lanka police said the victim was a resident of Watugedera and he was gunned down when travelling on his motorcycle. Sri Lanka police believes a T-56 assault rifle was used to commit the murder and suspect the shooting may be the result of an ongoing dispute between criminal gangs linked to drugs. A total of 26 criminals linked to drugs and other crimes were gunned down from the 30th of May 2022 to 31st of August 2022, said Sri Lanka police on Thursday. Police spokesperson SSP attorney at law Nihal Taldu said that these murders are linked to an ongoing feud between criminal gangs.
Crime Watch.
The Human Rights Commission has recommended the Army commander to institute a disciplinary inquiry and take appropriate action against the Lieutenant Colonel who kicked a civilian at the Dambulla Yaggahapitiya filling station. This recommendation should be implemented before the 16th of September. A video circulated on social media showcasing this army officer kicking a civilian who was escorted by two officers during an uneasy situation at the Yaggahapitiya filling station. The Human Rights Commission, which investigated a complaint in this regard, recommended that the law be implemented against the relevant officer, and if it is not implemented, the Human Rights Commission has informed the complainant to notify within a week from September 16th. Samaki Janabalaveke MP Kavinda Jayawardena commented on the Chinese debt and the Yuan Wang 5 in Parliament on Wednesday.
A statement which I have seen very recently on helping Sri Lanka by the Chinese ambassador's article, where he have mentioned about the vessel which came to Sri Lankan Hambantota port, which is a surveillance and a research vessel, which have concerned the regional security. And even though the government of Sri Lanka requested the Chinese government and the ambassador to delay the arrival of this vessel, yet the vessel came on time or a little later. The question is that if the Chinese government or the China, if they are helping us, are they going to reschedule our loans? At the same time, we have obtained over 10% of our debt from China. According to the Chinese ambassador, that if they are trying to help Sri Lanka, the most concerning fact is that if they are ready to reschedule our loans and respect the integrity and the independence and sovereignty of our country.
SLMC leader Rauf Hakim condemned the use of the PTA during the parliamentary debate.
We all know that the PTA was introduced way back in 1978 and it was supposed to be a temporary provisions act. It is totally in violation of all the safeguards that are given by time-tested legislations which are there to protect anyone who is accused of any crime. Our evidence ordinance, our criminal procedure code, our penal code, the accepted norms all are put aside. Confessions are admissible. Now, particularly this administrative detention is a very serious issue. And it is regrettable that the President has gone on to sign a detention order against these people who are protesting. Is this the example or is this the message that you want to give the international community? We have serious reservations about this. I hope the President will reverse this trend and have some proper review of what is happening and change course in order to try and achieve the objective that he has placed in this interim budget.
Environment Minister Nazir Ahmed told Arab media that Sri Lanka is seeking to boost energy cooperation with Saudi Arabia and has invited the kingdom to set up a refinery in the South Asian nation.
Environment Minister Nasir Ahmed arrived in Riyadh on Sunday as special envoy of the Sri Lankan President and has held meetings with officials from the kingdom, including Saudi Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Walid Al-Quraji and CEO of the Saudi Fund for Development Sultan Al-Marshad. Nasir Ahmed told Arab News that improving cooperation with Saudi Arabia would be helpful in easing the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka. The Environment Minister had said that Sri Lanka is offering Saudi Arabia to have its own refinery in Sri Lanka, and the island nation can also provide enough storage facilities which could cover the region. Nasir Ahmed said that Saudi's 2030 vision, a reform plan designed to diversify the kingdom's economy, could also benefit Sri Lanka. The Environment Minister is optimistic that stronger energy cooperation will boost bilateral trade to billions of dollars from the current $300 million and enable Sri Lanka to buy oil with long-term conditions.
Sirasa TV and the Education Ministry joined hands to launch a program to create one of the longest paintings in Sri Lanka on Wednesday. The first phase commenced from Jaffna on Thursday, that is today. United We Stand is the theme for the longest painting by Sri Lankan school children that is being created for the World Children's Day 2022, which falls on the 1st of October. This work of art is expected to be 1,000 feet long, and the launch of the painting took place at the Independence Square in Colombo on Wednesday. 2 paintings from each of the 25 districts will be brought together to create one massive painting. The Met Department states that fairly heavy showers exceeding 75 millimeters could be expected at some places in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central, northwestern and the northern provinces. The Met Department says a low-level atmospheric disturbance still persists in the vicinity of Sri Lanka. The National Building Research Organisation says the landslide early warnings to Colombo, Galle, Kaluthara, Kandy, Kegol, Matale and Ratnapura districts are still in effect.
Assistant Director of the Nuwara District Disaster Management Unit Ranjit Alahakun says that due to the heavy rains in the western slopes of the Central Hills, the sluice gates of several reservoirs have been opened. Norton Bridge Vimala Surendra Reservoir has reached spill level. 3 gates have also been opened in Lakshapana Reservoir below it. Meanwhile, the Assistant Director of the Nuwara District Disaster Management Unit, Ranjit Alahakun, urged the general public to be cautious while driving on the main roads of the Hatton Colombo, Hatton Nuwara and Nuwara Gampola due to the risk of landslides. A flood situation is reported from the Halpe area as heavy rains were experienced in Bandaravale yesterday and the day before yesterday. Due to floods, the crops grown in the area were also damaged. Our reporter said that vehicular movement was also hampered from Halpe to Alla.
And that's a wrap of lunchtime news here on News First, where the people come first. You can visit our website www.newsfirst.lk for all these stories and much more. Thank you for joining. Have yourself a great day ahead.